I'm back at my parents' place, so my bitrate won't be as good as it typically is with the other videos, but it'll be good enough that you'll be able to obviously look back on it and not, want to throw up looking at how crappy the quality
Uh-huh.
is. So don't worry about that. But I just wanted to let you know. A better question. So like I was just saying before, better question is why did you personally want to get coaching?
Well, I actually already get coaching from someone, and the coaching I get is
You don't
VOD
have to.
review.
Okay, yeah, you don't necessarily have to say who it is, but okay, cool. You get VOD review. Okay.
I don't really care. I get coaching from Bones. I don't know if you know who that
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. I know Bones. Bones is good. He
Uh,
fun fact, he actually he about a year ago he decided to pick up Falcon and drop Falco for a while, and he felt like Falco was holding him back or something like that, and he thought that Falcon was kind of the future for him. I think he spent maybe 2 months with Falcon, and he realized that Falco is just a way better character for him. And it was very interesting because he came in here, he's like, "Hey, this and that, I want to try this and I want to do this," and then all of a sudden, 2 months later, he's like out of the Discord, doesn't even post, not doesn't play Falcon whatsoever. It was quite funny, but
yeah, I heard him talk about that a little bit, like how he main Falcon for a bit. I was thinking he was just doing it for fun because I know he plays Sheik right now too. Like I guess just for unranked or like a possible secondary. I didn't know that he was straight up like, okay, Falco can't do it anymore.
yeah,
But
he literally, as far as what I remember, I might be misremembering, but for what I remembered, it came down to essentially, I don't think Falco can do what I need Falco to do, or he thought he was limited by Falco, and he's like, well, I'm gonna see. Falcon seems to be doing well, especially this was about a year ago, and all the Falcons were doing quite well then. I think 2019, I think it was. So Wizzy and Nun and SUJ, they were all
right,
doing pretty well at that time. Even Gatsu. So I guess he thought to himself, Falcon seems like a bread and butter character, which a lot of people like to describe him as, and he seems like an easy enough character. But anyone who has that kind of train of thought quickly realizes that unless it's for a specialized matchup, like let's say you're ice climbers and you pick up a fox to deal with Peach, changing characters overall is probably not the best because every character has difficulties. There's not a single character in this game, any top tiers especially, that are way better to use, unless, like I said, in specific matchups, than to use over your current character that you usually use, especially since you have way more experience typically with that other character, right? It's like with example with Bones. He was a Falco main for I don't know how long he's been playing for, but he's been playing since I think 2006. He's been at least on Smashboard since 2006, and I think he's been mostly
yeah,
Falco for majority of that time. So all of a sudden, 10, 15 years after that to now, all of a sudden be like, yeah, I'm going to drop Falco completely and pick up another character is extremely difficult to do. But I think he quickly realized that, yeah, I'm not really going to get much further with Falcon, more so than, he currently was with Falco even. So, but that's cool,
but
yeah.
yeah, I the to answer like why I felt like I needed lessons, especially if I already have another coach. Like his coaching style is VOD review. He has like other options, like kind of what you have, where it's like, oh, you play me for a little bit or whatever. But um, and the VOD reviews, like I think it's really beneficial. I've already learned a lot, but I feel like I kind of like the concept of just getting ideas of what I should be looking for or doing because his kind of thing was kind of looking at what my mistakes were. Like, okay, you're doing this way too much out of shield, or uh, you overcommitted over here. It should have not been so eager to do this or whatever. And I feel like I just kind of I want, especially from a Falcon main, not like Bones is bad with Falcon. He clearly had like a lot of knowledge, but like I feel like there's kind of a difference too when uh someone who plays a completely different character versus someone who like especially in this Discord where everyone here kind of seems to just love the character as a whole and
Oh
like
yeah,
the
I
idea of
love
Falcon.
I love Falcon. Yeah, he's other than Ganon, he's probably my favorite character in the game. So and definitely having applied knowledge to actually and have the experience of playing Falcon, and I like this, and not to my own horn, but I have decently high level enough Falcon experience, so I know what works and what doesn't. Right? You could say, hey, this situation works, but a lot of times people don't realize that you can't cookie cutter the game into specific instances as much as some people realize. Falcon, punish wise, you can to a degree. But there's a lot of neutral things that people will watch specifically. Let's say with none, and they'll be like, they have no clue if they don't play the character, and even if they do play the character, they have no clue why he would go for a specific option. Whereas I look at it, I'm like, that's exactly what I would have thought to do. And same with like Wizzy, even though they're completely different. I look at it, I'm like, I know exactly why they did that in that situation. And you'll hear the commentators be like, "What are these guys thinking?" And or even high level players of other characters, they'll look at it, and I've heard them say, they're like, I don't know why the hell this guy would go for this option. Like, it makes no sense. But there's always a reason behind it. And I personally think I do have that knowledge. Not to say that Bones might not necessarily have it, but I can say for sure that I definitely do. But yeah, we can definitely go over specific ideas behind things. I think one of the best things one of the first things I like to do specifically is, it's much easier to pinpoint or discuss ideas if we're talking about a specific matchup, even though, matchups are quite different from character to character. Falcon is the kind of character where you can choose, you can use a lot of the same ideas in different matchups, like crouch canceling,
Yeah.
and certain defensive options, and overall just game plans too. Because typically, as far as majority of the matchups go for Falcon, the underlying game plan at low percents is pretty similar between each character, at least for what you want, right? Like at a very low mid percentage, majority of the things that you are trying to go for are basically nair, knee, and knee, stomp, and grab. Nair and back air and up air and all those can get crouch canceled a lot of the times, or they don't lead into a launcher, or don't lead into a grab or whatever. But a lot of the times, or majority of the matchups, the best ways to go about and here actually I'll share my screen. The best ways to go about getting a neutral opening or punish is probably by those three options, and I'll go over specifically why in a second. 1 second, I gotta stop streaming. I think I clicked better text readability by accident. All right, let me know if you can see my stream.
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome. So why I say, and now here a better question actually is, let's say for Fox, or how about this? What is the specific matchup that you find is difficult right now currently for you? Like one that you're like, I have absolutely no idea what to do in neutral or punish or anything like that, if you have one.
So I think the matchup I struggle with the most is Marth, but I feel like Marth is very like fighting Marth. I feel like is super different from fighting the rest of the cast. That like I feel like when I learn about game plans for Marth, it'll like get me in the wrong mindset for matchups like Fox or something. Like I'll be like, okay, for Marth I like to do this, so then like I'll kind of autopilot and think that I had to do the same for Fox, and so I'm kind of like scared of that.
Okay, that's one. Okay, that I'm glad you actually said that. How often do you go into now? I don't know if you enter tournaments or not, but do you compete often or no?
I have entered one online tournament. Um, yeah, I've entered one online tournament.
Okay, that's another thing. I think try to enter a few more tournaments here and there. It doesn't have to be weekly. It doesn't even have to be even bi-weekly. Try to enter tournaments like once a month or something to get you comfortable with the feeling of tournament, and understand yourself better under pressure. Now obviously your goal in tournament is to do your best, and that's what your goal should be, but at the same time, you can also use tournament as a way to build your mentality, which a lot of people typically don't try to do early enough. Besides that, I liked how you said, I'm going to briefly touch upon how you said you kind of are worried about focus on a specific matchup, your game plan, say specifically with Marth, and then you try to autopilot and use that for a different matchup. Now, my question is, how often do you really think about, playing a certain character and what specifically your game plan is? Like, let's say, for instance, you're in unranked, and even if you're playing for, a couple games, do you ever just, like, stop yourself for a second after a game and think of specifically what your game plan is?
So when I'm in rank, Um, like if I queue up and I say, okay, I'm playing against the Fox, there's always like the few general ideas I have in my mind, and they could be completely wrong. Like I could have like listened to the wrong people and they told me these ideas, but like my idea, if I'm playing against the Fox, okay, I'm thinking like Nair in place is really good, Lord Stomp, Wizzy Stomp, and kind of trying to avoid getting shine spiked, like very general stuff. Maybe like kind of focusing on the wrong specifics, but that's usually what I'm thinking. But for the most part, actually, like I know I said I have those game plans, but for the most part, I kind of just play by feel. Like I'm noticing, okay, this guy just spamming shield crab. I'm gonna try to avoid that now.
Okay,
Like not,
that's good that you do that. I was like, I'm gonna briefly touch upon that after in a second. So that's good. Thanks for that response. Now, specifically, why I asked that is that your game plans, in my mind, game plans. A lot of people, and I'm glad that yours is very simplistic because that's good. A lot of people try to, when I ask them that question, they come up with a game plan where they're like, I like to do this and then that and then this and then that. And then I'm like, all these extra things. And my mind is, how do you play intuitively when you have all of these in the back of your mind, trying to think about that as your game plan, right? So it's good
yeah,
that your game plan's simplistic. Now, your first initial bit where you talk about Nair in place is good and Stomp, the Lord Stomp is good and whatnot, like that in particular, I wouldn't call it a game plan. What I think of a game plan is like what you kind of did later on in that statement where you said not to get shine spiked. Now, more specifically, what I like to talk about or what I like to think about in gameplays or game plan wise is what do I want? What do I not want? What do they want? And what do they not want? Now, and I briefly touched upon this just a second ago, not that long ago, where I talked about low percent and what you need to get in order to get a follow up. Now, like specifically, let's say versus, like I said, majority of characters, your main follow up options and what you want to get are like a stomp or a grab or a knee if they're
yeah,
super low percent. Now, if they're a little bit higher percent, you can start, potentially hitting them with an up air or back air or even a nair if you can catch them properly and they're not holding down or whatever, right? Honestly, nair is probably one of the best neutral tools you have. Up air isn't the greatest unless they're actually above you. Now, again, it comes down to, in my mind, what do you want, what do you not want, and same vice versa for them. Now, for instance, with somebody like Fox, Fox wants a shine, a grab, or like a meaty launcher, like an up smash, right? At lower
yeah,
percents. What he doesn't want is he doesn't want what you want, right? Which is super simple to
yeah,
think about. And it's funny because whenever anyone asks me, hey, what do I do versus Falco? Falco seems like it's such a hard matchup for me as a Falcon main, they say, right? And I say, low percent, Falco just wants to shine. So if you literally prioritize never getting shined, like never trying to jump out when you shouldn't, never trying to approach and getting caught incorrectly, stuff like that. If you don't give Falco what he wants in that juicy launcher, he's not going to be able to combo you and you're going to be able to outpunish him because most of the time you get a stomp and you get one throw, you can literally get a single, it could be, a single read and you can lead to kill. Whereas Falco typically has to shine you and then he has to do this, it leads up to this and that, and it is a much more long punish. But if you don't give him that start, he's not going to be able to build that momentum and actually, combo you effectively, right? So again, it comes down to what specific options do you want? And now that obviously leads you into, more specific, micro situations, but the raw game plan should be behind, specific things that I want and what they don't want and vice versa.
interesting.
And I find that's the easiest way to think about game plan because then you don't have to necessarily think too hard. Everything can come more intuitively. The micro situations come, by feel, but the overall, you'll see specific situations and like you said beforehand, I'm not going to get shined by Falco. So then you're going to hold shield a little bit longer and you're going to roll instead of, jumping at a shield and then giving them a free punish. Or I'm not going to do these blind nairs. And then again, this isn't me actively describing this, but this is kind of the idea I had in the back of my head when I say don't give easy shines. I'm not going to blindly nair in at bad timings and get caught with a CC shine or nair shine if they catch me properly. it's really I'm just trying to attack in advantageous situations, which brings me to my next point. A lot of people when they play melee, specifically, and just in general, actually, sorry, they try to attack in disadvantaged situations. So
Yeah, happens
instead
to me a
of
lot.
right, and that's one of the biggest issues. Instead of just waiting and trying to even fully reset neutral or anything like that, they try to attack. May it be out of shield, or may it be out of the corner, or when they're off stage coming onto stage. All of these are very typical situations that people try to attack when they shouldn't. If you watch any good player, any good Falcon, which we could do real quickly, find literally any set. Actually, let's do Wizrobe because let's do S2J.
Who's your personal favorite?
None's my personal favorite. My favorite Falcons used to be the ones I really looked up to in the very beginning of when I started, which was around 2014. It was probably Yoppie, Lord, and Sound Spectre were like the main Falcons I watched a lot. And then more so like 2016, 2017, 2018, I watched a lot more None, especially because he's from my region. So I've watched him a lot just because, cheering for,
Yeah.
the homies. But I've always been a fan of None just because I think he plays the most melee-like Falcon out there next to S2J, and then Wizzy plays the most, without saying it in a bad way, he plays the most robotic and not necessarily. He kind of just is a punish monkey to a degree. He has neutral awareness and whatnot, but he's very robotic in what he chooses to do. Very stiff, very reversal heavy, which is fine, but it's also because he's able to punish that much harder than other Falcons are able to, right? What's a specifically good set actually? We're watching Mango. That's another thing a lot of people don't watch is Mango Falcon. Specifically, let's watch this set because this is Marth.
Green Falcon.
Now, coming back to specifically attacking out of disadvantage, this brings me to my next point, which is, and you kind of touched upon it very briefly about how you play by feel and you kind of like notice if this opponent, person you're playing versus likes to shield grab a lot, and you keep a mental note of that. What I like to describe to a lot of my students is that when I'm playing versus somebody, there's a lot of things, a lot of, options on average that most people will choose in specific situations. And now what I mean by that is, for instance, let's say you are a Falcon, or let's say you are tech chasing a Fox, and you're slightly late to a punish, but you're enough that you can get frame advantage. And you know what I mean by frame advantage, right? Where you have the ability to act before they do, but you don't necessarily have a true punish. So and what normally what people will do, let's say if you're a little bit late and they're Spacey versus a Falcon, and you're playing more reactionary based, they'll probably spot dodge, right? And that's like a typical option. Whereas some people, a more not typical option would be they would run away and back air. But the average option, the most used option is probably spot dodge in that situation. Now, these are the kind of things I have in my mind already just from playing for a long time. But these are the kind of, this is what I call my framework, right? And so whenever I'm in a situation where, there's a, mostly used option, I'm looking for that option in the beginning of a set, right? Now, if it so happens that situation comes up and they deviate from the norm, I keep note of that. Because the thing is even though that they might be doing something different than what is normal to what I have in my framework, more likely not, they're going to do that same option again. And what I mean by that is in the same situation where I get a down throw and then all of a sudden, I'm trying to go for that knee on that spot dodge read. Instead, they go for a back air. They're probably going to go for that back air again instead of, changing it up. So that's the kind of...
Bones explained that concept to me. Like, don't go for the mix-up until they present like until they show you that they will mix up. Like
Exactly.
if they keep on rolling in, always read the roll in until they show you that they can deviate from the
From it, right?
idea. Or yeah,
Exactly. And so that's one thing. And again, to build up that kind of framework, you have to just continuously play the game, but also just watching videos in general helps you kind of understand and finding patterns, right? Finding patterns between specific situations helps a lot. So besides that, I think it might be beneficial to maybe watch a bit of Marth, like Falcon Marth. And I want to say, just from your specific game plan that you told me earlier, just in general, I don't remember which matchup it was for. I think it was Fox you described, but you said a lot of in-place defensive moves. Now, the thing about Falcon is that he has the ability to overshoot considerably well, right? Probably the best compared to any character in the game. The thing is that a lot of players don't use that to their full advantage. They like to play more in place, more defensive. They kind of want the opponent to approach them. But the issue with that is it's very predictable. And not only is it very predictable, but it gives the onus on the opponent to set the pace of neutral. And that can be very poor with somebody who's very comfortable with doing that. So if you and the thing is that playing very defensively and they set the pace of neutral, you're relying on them messing up and then you getting a reversal or counterattack punish off of that. And if that's not happening in the way that you wish it to happen, and then you're not punishing off of it, the game will not go in your favor. Which is why playing offensively, or at least mixing up offense with your defense, is very, 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 very important as Falcon. Unless, like I said, unless you're Wizzy and you have godlike punish, and even he approaches more than people realize. Even he'll do like a random full drift forward short hop knee or something, or his double jump drift forward, low to the ground up air, or his run up and he'll just run across the entire stage and just grab them. It's kind of stuff like that I don't know where you are, because I've never seen you play, where you are on kind of the Falcon spectrum. So I'm trying my best not to, pigeonhole you into a specific way that I might necessarily think about Falcon. But the idea is still important, that you need to be willing to approach. And now the thing is that a lot of people think about, well, whenever I approach, I get stuffed. Or whenever I approach, I get CC'd. Or whenever I approach, they dash back and I get grabbed, or whatever it is. And the thing is that that's one of those weird things about Melee, where you kind of have to spam an option, and that brings me to my next point. You need to spam an option until you get comfortable with doing it. A lot of people ask me specifically, how do I incorporate CC, like crouch canceling, which I don't know how comfortable you are with crouch canceling, if you even use it at all. But a lot of people ask me, how do I incorporate crouch canceling into my game? And I personally live by the philosophy that to learn specific techniques, especially ones that are quite, used universally in a lot of different situations, the easiest way is to spam it when you're playing in unranked or with your friends or whatever. And by spamming it, I mean like literally replacing all the other options that you could use instead of that and using that instead. So for example, let's say you're incorporating crouch canceling and you say to yourself, I'm going to only crouch cancel when I should be shielding, which means that you are literally not going to shield whatsoever when you're playing versus someone on unranked. Even if you end up eating a freaking down smash versus a Peach, you're still going to learn kind of how and when and where to use crouch canceling. It seems a bit extreme, but the thing is that a lot of people don't understand is that we don't have capabilities as humans. We don't have the capabilities of learning things all at once. So if you're like working at you're practicing and you're like, I'm going to work on reaction tech traces, and then I'm also going to work on crouch canceling, and then I'm also going to work on SDI up off jab, and I'm also going to work off hack stashing, and I'm also going to work in this and that and this and that. You're never going to be able to understand it if you have if you're very early on. It's going to be very difficult for you to grasp how to do it and when to do that specific action, especially something like crouch canceling. So what I always tell a lot of my students that, again, I don't know how comfortable you are with overshooting and stuff like that. I haven't watched any of your VODs, but what I recommend for a lot of people is that you go on unranked and you spend a lot of time just overshooting overshoot knee, overshoot nair, overshoot stomp, and really trying it at different timings and spacings. And the reason why I brought up a Mango video is because Mango loves overshoots. He's one of the biggest, players out there. And again, this is a video from 7 years ago. He's one of the biggest players out there who loves to overshoot with Falcon. He's very drift heavy and very, spacing, heavy and very timing, dependent player. And that brings me into my other point with drifts. The biggest issue with, throwing out a lot of moves in place is that you don't cover a lot of space. With Falcon particularly, who has a ton of drift, you want to be, and has a lot of aerials that have very active hitboxes for a while, you want to use that to your advantage. When you do some nair in place, or you do, stomp in place, you're not threatening anything except for that specific area. Whereas when you do like a full drift knee, you're covering, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you're covering a decent portion depending on when you time it or when you throw it out, if you fast fall it or not, which is very, very, very good. Active hitboxes that cover a lot of range are very good, especially something like knee, where a lot of the times you throw it out and you'll at worst get a trade, unless you get outright stuffed. But knee's active for a while and catches a lot of people, and it's a lot more ambiguous too with how long, like how far out it reaches. That it's such an important tool that can catch a lot of people more than you think. And I bet you've probably played versus a fox, and you're like trying to approach them, and you're like, man, I can't get in on this guy. Like he just kind of camps in the corner. Something like knee is very, very, very good at catching that. Extremely good, because it's out for a while. I think it was. I remember I was watching a Drug Fox video about. I think it was Drug Fox, like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and he was talking about Falcon Sheik. For both perspectives. I think it was predominantly from Sheik's perspective, but it had a decent amount of insight about Falcon. And the one thing he said was one of the best moves you can approach with is the knee. Knee has active hitbox. It has a strong hitbox and a soft hitbox. It catches people more than people realize, and it's out for a while. And not only that, but it's at a height where it can stuff a lot of things better than nair or definitely up air. And it also reaches out more than, say, something like stomp. And so, it comes down to, and I'll show you in a bit how to specifically, approach like that. But it comes down to using those aggressive options, those offensive options to help facilitate a more mix up heavy kind of play style instead of a roll. 1 second. Instead of relying on them running into your moves. Sorry about that. My mom just came in and gave me some tea. But I'll show you now specifically what I mean. Now, the reason I'm showing you Mango versus, some Marth, I'm not going to say the name, is because he's very big on using his drift. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be, full drift forward from like a short hop. He also loves to do, from a shielding position. Right here, or not even shield, but like from a standing position. He's trying to fully drift forward and nair. I don't know if you saw that there, but he lands right here. He's from a standing position, and he does a quickly jump forward, and then he does a full drift nair. He doesn't do a nair in place. He doesn't do a stop in place or whatever. And I get obviously Mart's not attacking in this situation, but he uses the full drift of Falcon. And honestly, he uses it probably more than he does like aerials in place. If you watch this whole video, you'll never see Mango really do many aerials in place. Unless they're really close to him, right? Yeah, he tries to knee forward. Gotta wait for the stock to end. Like he's trying to use platforms right now because he's trying to, I don't know exactly why he would use platforms here, but I think he's just trying to deal with the moon swinging at him at low percents. Personally, I wouldn't use platforms at low percent versus Marth, especially when you can still CC as Falcon and he's low percent. You can't really pop him up. But you'll notice he does a lot of like no fast falls. Like he'll full hop, no fast fall. He's really just trying to whiff punish Marth. I want to find a situation more so about him overshooting. He definitely uses his spacing correctly. Let me just find it. Here, overshoot. Or at least overshoot where Marth might be. Full drift forward, no fast fall there. He drifts forward.
What do you think of so right there, that overshoot into knee, that kind of an option, like, I mean, obviously there's many different micro situations and like things going on, like your opponent's playstyle, your playstyle, the stage and whatever, but like something like that, is that like a wise thing to do, to go for a knee right after? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I do that overshoot near, I'm dashing back and then going back with another overshoot near, something like that. He just goes full on with a knee.
The thing is about this is that the Moon thought, and now this is one of those things where it's such an early part of the set that Mango just decided he felt like he had enough frame advantage. Because the thing is, Marth rolls pretty bad. Mango's able to act first here, right? So Mango nairs, right? If we slow this down, Mango nairs, but then Marth rolls, right? Mango's able to act first, and Mango knows that, and the Moon also knows that. And so in this situation, because the Moon feels like Mango is able to act first, he decides to go for a defensive option. So it's about knowing your frame advantage, essentially, is what it comes down to. Knowing, what I can choose and whether or not they can defend it. If Marth was able to act here first, then what you just said would be a better option to do, because Falcon's options are a little bit, leggier than most people's, right? So you kind of have to time it. Falcon's all about timing and drift. He's very timing and drift dependent, right? Because majority of characters we play versus, they have like frame 7 aerials or even like frame 5 aerials, right? Whereas Falcon's fastest move is frame 10, and that's if you're frame perfect. And the thing is that like most of the time you're not going to be frame perfect, especially at your level. So this situation specifically, the reason he went for that knee is because he knew he could act first.
Okay.
That's why. Mango was like, okay, he just rolled. I know that Marth's roll is shit. Because Marth rolls, especially back rolls, very, very, very laggy. And he knows that, hey, I can act first. And that's what he does. He shields for a second, and then he throws at a knee. And the Moon, expecting, Mango to go for a grab, because that's what most Falcons would have went there. Again, it comes down to the framework, except in this situation now, it's Marth's idea of what Falcon typically does instead of what, we think the opponent's going to do.
Uh-huh.
Marth thinks, most Falcons are going to go for a grab here. So what does he do? He goes for a spot dodge. Maybe not the best option, but in his mind, it's what felt the best. Whereas Mango's like, I'm just going to knee you. And then now this comes full circle to what I was talking about before about what does Falcon want at low percent? Knee, stomp, or grab. And the reason why is exactly this. Mango is able to get a knee into a grab. Now he's able to get a punish, and at worst, he has center stage. And he chooses to go for that stomp because he's not going for, he's not going for the reaction, because he realizes I could go for the reaction, but obviously it's 2014, so he's probably not thinking about them sliding off. But in my mind nowadays, if I go for an up air here, Marth's going to slide off. So I'm going to go for a stomp. Even though they can slide off stomp too, I can at least get a bit more percentage. And Mango chooses to go for the stomp in on the platform so that at worst, he gets stage positioning, like he gets, center stage. And at best, he gets a stomp into potentially another follow-up, right?
Uh-huh.
And then he can use that stage to his advantage because he notices, he feels like Marth's going to attack, so he dashes away, and then he whiff punishes. And one thing that a lot of Marths love to do is they love to dash underneath you. That's one thing you have to be aware of. It's one of those things beforehand that I say to myself in my game plan, essentially. Besides, like I said before, that you specifically, focus on, what do I want, what do I not want, and vice versa. For Marth specifically, I think about the fact that they love to dash underneath me. So I keep that in the back of my mind. If Marth is close to me and not gonna, and is dashing, he's probably gonna dash underneath me. Marth's either gonna wall or dash underneath you, or like dash past you. Those are like the kind of two different things that Marths really like to do. They'll wall you or they'll dash underneath you. And so in that case, Mango decides, okay, or he realizes that and he says, okay, I'm just gonna, time my nair, not fast fall it, and then drift back in slightly. Now, it's okay, and again, I want to make this very clear. Like I said before, it's quite okay to do aerials in place. It's absolutely fine. It's just you need to make sure that those aerials in place that you choose to do are against an opponent who's close enough that's going to get hit by it. A lot of times people will do specific aerials in place and the opponent is nowhere near them. And that doesn't really do anything. You are like, if you are like a Marth versus a Falcon, it makes sense because most of the time Falcon is going to be approaching you from far away. Where someone like Marth, you can't really drift that far forward. So unless they're close to you, and same with like a Fox too, even though Fox feels like he can, drift, decently far, most of the time he's just running at you. So like, yes, Stomp in place is good, Lord Stomp's good, Nair in place is good, but it's only good if they're near you. And that's kind of the bad habit that a lot of Falcons run into early on, is that they get a lot of mileage off of things working when they and getting rewarded for it when they shouldn't necessarily want to be rewarded for that. And what I mean,
Well, I have a question about that. Sorry if I was interrupting you, but I have a question about that concept of like a nair that isn't gonna hit being pointless, because I know you guys could have just differing opinions or whatever, but in my lessons with Bones, he kind of went over the fact that something like a nair, even though it doesn't hit, like if I do nair, like let's say I just got out of disadvantage and we're now like right back to neutral. Like the second we're back to neutral, I would do like a nair in center stage because that's good for like establishing space that like now I have center. Like, is that so? Like what you said before with a nair that isn't gonna hit, like does that mean that type of concept applies where it's like it doesn't work even there where it's to establish space? Or is that
it's
just
more
like
so it's more so why would you do that when you can just dash dance instead?
Okay.
In my mind, why would you, especially when it's, let's say it's early in the set, right? Why would you try to establish space like that when you can try and see how they act out of corner? Right?
Okay.
Because people like to act out of corner in specific ways. Not many people aren't the greatest at like changing up how they're approaching at a corner or getting out of corner or timings or whatever that's associated with that. So yes, doing the nair in that position isn't necessarily bad, but why do that when you can just dash dance and wait for an option instead, which is what Mango does, right? Like this specific situation here. Right here, he could have easily done a nair here, but he decides to dash dance. Now, he was at a frame disadvantage slightly. He didn't have to be because he accidentally air dodged, right? But if he wasn't at a frame disadvantage here, more likely not, he probably just would have waited a second. And the thing is, if you're doing an aerial in place, especially versus a character like Marth, if they know you're going to do an aerial in place, they can just wait a second, like a split second, and then go for a fair instead and swat you out. Whereas if you dash dance, they're not going to be able to hit you at a specific. They're not going to. They would have to They literally would have to running F smash you, which is like extremely hard commit, or do a dash attack. So the committal on their part is way higher when you do dash dancing than when you do like a nair in place. So you're right. You can establish that kind of pressure, I guess. Well, it's not really pressure, but that, stage presence, I guess you could say. But why? There's not really a reason to do it when you can just dash dance instead. In my mind, especially when you're trying to figure out, you're trying to get intel early on. If later on in the set you realize that they a nair in place is good there, then go for it. But in my mind, that seems kind of like a wasted effort almost when you can just wait for them to do something. Again, they might not immediately approach, in which case then you can start applying your pressure again. But to immediately aggress isn't necessarily, or immediately attack or immediately wall isn't necessarily needed. And Mango shows that perfectly here. Again, he's kind of in frame disadvantage, but the point would still apply. Because then you can kind of realize what do they like to do immediately. And now Mango knows that the Moon likes to just nair a corner if he has that opportunity like that. See, and nair again out of the corner. Right? Again, there's no wrong answers in Melee. It's all about how you choose to develop, the knowledge of how your opponent likes to behave. And for Falcon, I find that in any character in general, the more you kind of can understand the way that your opponent acts, the faster and the more easily you can read them. And especially certain things like acting in a corner, getting off of ledge, habits off stage, habits on platforms, habits in panic situations or situations where there's frame disadvantage on their part, stuff like that. I want to build intel on so then I can actually punish them more effectively and get to a point where I'm punishing their options and then they have to start adapting and mixing it up. But until then, I'm not going to necessarily throw out, a nair in place like that because Marth can easily swap me out, out of the way. If it's like a Fox who, slid off in that situation, I could see a nair being good. I can definitely see a nair being good just because the fact you outrange him and, the Fox, likes to be more aggressive. But in this situation, Marth has equal range, if not a little bit more, just because of the fact he can, disjoint. So, again, Bones isn't necessarily incorrect there. I'm just saying from, my perspective, doing a dash dance here is better. In that kind of, like you said, where, you have that, I don't know exactly how you put it, but that kind of...
Showing that I have center stage or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Establishing my space.
Establishing your space. And you'll notice, if we even look at a different video, watch none, Falcon versus Marth, let's say. Now, this can change depending on the matchup. But you'll notice that he's not going to do many nairs in place. Unless, of course, like I said, he's right in front of them, right? And this is also more like combo-based, right?
What about retreating nair?
That can be good, but honestly, I find it's better just
I'm not talking about in specifically like establishing space situations, but in place nair is good if they're right in front of me. Is retreating nair like, for example, it's good out of shield, like during shield pressure or something?
Retreating nair, honestly, I'd never use retreating nair. I'd rather use, I'd rather be able to move or do a bear than I would to do retreating nair. Mostly it's because it's not in a range where... The thing is with retreating nair is that you're hoping that they come further than where you were before. Does that make sense? So, for instance, if I'm center stage right here, and again, I don't know if you can see my mouse or if the recording can.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm center stage right here. If I do retreating nair here, I'm expecting them to be going further than where I was already in that position. Unless I hit that nair very early. But if I'm doing a retreating nair and I'm pulling back, I'm hoping that I'm going to catch them even further back. Now, that's not bad, but at the same time, you're giving up space, which again, that can be pretty brutal. And not only that, but you're hoping that they're going to be overshooting enough in order to get hit by that nair. And not only that, but even if you do get hit by it, you're not going to necessarily be able to follow up as easy as you were to do even a nair in place or a nair forward. Right? When you already have momentum from moving, it's much easier to get a follow-up off of it. Whereas if you're moving backwards, you then have to, move forwards again, and it's just, and more likely not, it might not even hit or whatever. There's too many, in my opinion, there's too many what ifs or what could happen, what this and what not. There is a time and a place to do retreating there, but it's honestly, majority of the time, it's better to just run back, or it's better to bear, or it's better to just, go to a platform. It's usually almost always better to do a different option, in my mind. Especially because, retreating aerials, other than like bear or knee, like Nair isn't out that long, right? Bear or knee is out for a decent amount of time, but Nair is not necessarily out for that much. And so you're not going to be covering as much space for that long. Whereas something with Nair or bear, you can cover more space, it's out for longer, it hits at a good height, right? All of that kind of matters in a lot of the situations that, typically come up, right? Which is why I'm not saying that, pullback Nair isn't useful. It's just that typically that it's not a useful option to use. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if it is, there's more likely not another option you can choose, instead. That's probably going to be better off. But again, you'll notice, like, if we watch this entire game, you might see one Nair in that position where Bones described. Maybe, if that. Probably not. Instead, he opts for, empty hops and waiting. He should be dead here. I'm just going to fast forward this. So that Nair right there is the one you're talking about, which is what Bones is describing, right? This is exactly what Bones is describing. And in my mind, it does work here. But let's see if it happens again at all for the rest of the set. He gets a stomp off of it, which is great. And then he gets, see how he got swatted there?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So yeah, it was good in the beginning, but in actuality, it's not that good. Zane's already caught up to that fact. And not only that, but it's not even that hard for Marth to really deal with it. Because like I said, most of the time, Marths are going to be walling. So you doing an aerial in place just lets them space around it, right? That's how I look at it. Marths are either dashing through you or dashing around you, or they're walling. It's like the two kind of different states. They're either dashing through you and around you to get a grab or a close aerial, or they're going to be walling. That's just what it is. He doesn't have the drift, but he has the disjoint and the range. So like I said, it worked that one time, but then he tries to do it again and he gets punished for it. But what does work? An overshot Nair. So again, my whole point isn't that, yes, this is, this isn't a good option to do or whatever. It's more so that there are better things you can do, and a lot of times you might get punished for it. And it's also something like that Nair feels like a comfortable option to do, right? And comfortable options aren't always the best to do.
Yeah.
Right? Especially because usually comfortable options are pretty punishable options. And again, you'll notice
that kind of applies to my whole idea where it might be just like what I said at the beginning, where I feel comfortable when I'm throwing out hitboxes. It could just be my mind. Okay, if I'm not throwing out a hitbox, I feel unsafe. I need to just become more comfortable with the idea of just dash dancing, being more reactive or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Just waiting a bit, right? Melee's all dependent on, when you choose to do a move, right? And then the spacing, how close you are. Because certain things are unreactable, right? But they could easily be beaten by a Marth just nairing in place at a specific timing. But it's all about understanding what, kind of a feeling behind when they like to throw at this option or those options, right? And again, this is already the mix-up happening. Before, None would have done his, nair in place, and then now he does his side B. Because he notices that Zane is swinging a lot more. The Falcon Marth matchup, as corny as it sounds, or as cliche as it sounds, rather, everyone's been saying it for years that, if Marth is playing, aerial base, you want to play more grounded as Falcon, and vice versa. If he's playing, more aerial, then you want to play more grounded or whatever. That applies for Falcon. If the Marth is swinging a lot, you kind of want to, you want to, play grounded and then Raptor boost them or, catch them in the air. If they're playing more grounded based, you playing more aerial based isn't always the best thing. Now, actually, how does it go? It goes if Falcon is grounded, Marth wants to be grounded. If Falcon is aerial based, then Marth wants to be aerial based. So what does None choose? None chooses a grounded option, which is Raptor Boost. He notices that Marth is swinging a lot, so he decides to go for a grounded option and scoop underneath him, right?
Wait, so
It's
so it's if Martha's grounded, Falcon should be grounded. I would have thought the opposite. Like I would have thought if Martha's like, for example, throwing out a lot of nairs, I want to dash dance and whiff punish grab that nair or something.
you can do that too, or CC is better actually, but the CC grab is grounded. Sorry, it goes if it goes for us. It goes if Marth is aerial based, then we want to be grounded. If Marth is grounded, then we might want to be more aerial based because then we can hit him with stomp or whatever, right? If he's more grounded, or hit him with a knee more easily, and he's not walling then, right? Whereas if again you could deviate from that cliche statement or that generalized statement because obviously you can hit Marth when he's in the air and you're in the air. You can also use a grounded option on Marth like a grab when he's on the ground. But it just works out a lot of the times in a lot of situations where if Marth's in the air, you want to do a grounded option like a CC or like a Raptor Boost or something, right? But that also means you can cut him off with a nair or a knee in the air, right? It's just getting you kind of aware of the counterplay more so than it is, a steadfast rule is what I should have prefaced with, right? Because again, in this situation, wherever he Raptor Boosts, I don't remember where it is, but I think it's coming up. Was it here or after? I think it was right here. Like right here, he definitely could have come in with a grab here, right? He definitely could have come in with grab, but he waited for a second, and then he went for, he waited for him to swing again, and then he did a grounded option. He could have easily have gone hit by that fair, CC grabbed it. He could have easily have, come in with a grab and whiff punished it. He could have done a lot of things, but the point stands is that previously what happened when Marth was walling like this, he tried to go for that, nair in place, and he got punished. And so what he tried to do next was, what was it? The exact mix-ups where, I forget where it was. I think it's coming up. Right here. The first time it happened, he got this specific situation where we were talking about before. He did the nair and then he went for a stomp and he caught him. So then Falcon won that exchange. Then it happened again, not that long after. Right, I think it was fared. Right here, and he gets fared. So then now Marth won. Now None is thinking to himself, okay, I can't do another aerial because he's just going to swat me away. He's going to drift slightly forward, which is what Zane did. He drifted slightly forward, and he's going to hit my nair or he's going to hit my aerial, right? He's going to wait, essentially. Okay, so then now he's thinking to himself, okay, now next time I'm going to go for a grounded move. I'm going to try and scoop him up. And now he could have easily done a CC grab. He could have done, like I said, a whiff punish grab. But he decides to go for a Raptor Boost because he's noticing he's swinging a lot and not fast falling immediately. That's another thing he's probably potentially noticing. Plus also, again, Raptor Boost is very easy to do, right? It's one of those like, man, I'm just going to throw it out and it feels comfortable. It might not be the best thing to choose there. It's probably the worst thing he could have chose there, but it worked out. But the idea there is that he's thinking to himself, he's swinging a lot. I'm going to now go for a grounded option or something to beat that, aerial-based option. Like right here, he could have easily grabbed that, but he decides to wait. And then he's like, okay, he's going to swing. I'm going to catch him. And it's that range, and this is a mix-up range. He's not reacting to anything. You can't react at this range, right? He's reacting to the spacing, but he's not reacting to, like right there, he's already throwing it out. He's thinking, okay, he's going to throw it out here, and he's already Raptor boosting. This is a read. This isn't he reacted to him jumping or whatever. This is him having an idea of he's in this specific position and he's going to swing. So he throws out a Raptor boost. And that's kind of the way you have to think about it. It's like, if Martha's swinging a lot, I either have to catch him at a timing where I beat his swing, or I have to beat the swing by CCing it, or by Raptor boosting, or by whiff punishing it completely with like a grab or something if I'm close enough, right? I find it's easiest to just beat it with CC. CC is just free. It's one of the easiest things to do. You just CC grab, or you CC, you can even CC Nair if you're fast enough, but really it's just CC grab is the best thing to do. I do CC forward tilt because I find it's more comfortable for me. But again, the best thing to do there is obviously CC dash and grab, right? If they're walling with a Nair or with a forward forward air or whatever. But the point still stands that I'm thinking about Marth is either walling or he's dash dancing. And more likely than not, if we're separated enough, he's going to be walling, right? He's not going to necessarily like if he thinks I'm going to come in, he's going to wall. If he thinks I'm going to stay back, then he's going to dash dance. But more likely than not, he's going to throw something out and try to stuff me. That's really kind of how the neutral works. Yeah.
So this is kind of what I've gotten so far, at least from the Marth stuff, where it's like, okay, dash dance, like space, not like only throw out hitboxes if they have a chance of hitting. Overshooting is like knee, like all the moves that last a long time, moves that
Nair's really good at overshooting. It's just if they're playing. So the thing is, Nair's really good if they're aerial based. Knee's really good if they're on the ground. If they're dash dancing on the ground back and forth here and they're going to dash back, Knee's better than Nair here. If they're going to be more aerial based like Zane is, Nair's better.
So kind of my question is, this has all been centered around Marth. Is there anything here where it's like, okay, I know that Knee is good for grounded Marth, but like you do not want to do this against Fox or something like that?
Honestly, you can overshoot with either Knee or Nair against Fox.
Well, not necessarily. I'm not talking about like specifically with Nair, but like in general, has this all been very like general where it's like I can kind of apply this to everything, or is it kind of specific to just Marth and it's not going to work against Sheik
over? So the idea with Sheik, you can do it similarly with how you're overshooting. But the thing is Sheik is walling in a different way than Marth is. Sheik has more instant aerials, so Sheik is going to be throwing it out. They're both going to wall you. That's what it comes down to. They're both going to throw out specific moves like fair or with Sheik forward tilt, which you can also whiff punish with a grab or CC. Side B is not as as utilized in versus Sheik, but side B is more a specific thing versus Marth. I don't necessarily side B versus any characters except for Marth, because Marth's the one where side B scoops very nicely against Nair. Whereas versus Sheik, I typically keep it to more Nairs, and then if I'm trying to hit them with an overshoot, I go for knees. Just because.
So is it? Sorry, what were you saying?
No, what were you gonna say?
So, like, I understand what you're saying, but like, I'm just kind of like, what you said about Marth. Would any of that information be harmful if I try to apply it to like all the other
characters? The main ideas I want you to kind of understand is that I think aerials in place are a little bit are fine versus Sheik, but also any grounded opponent, it's better to overshoot with knee. That's one thing I can say for certain, because Nair can get ASDI downed or crouch canceled or whatever. It's also out for less. So if you're ever going to make a hard commitment, it's better to overshoot with knee. Now, that doesn't mean you can't overshoot with Nair, but knee's just universally better in most matchups.
For grounded opponents?
For grounded, yes. In the air as well, too, honestly. But in general, knee is the best to overshoot with. Nair you can too, but it's more difficult.
So when I play against Fox, and I notice that they're dash dancing, they're just trying to shield grab me or whatever. My mind, I'm like, okay, because, and I was also kind of confused when you said like Nair doesn't stay out that long. I thought the opposite. I thought Nair was like the longest lasting, like that's why it's so good or whatever. But when I play against Fox, like in their dash dancing a lot in the corner, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna overshoot Nair here because it covers however far they might dash dance, and I might get a grab out of it. So like from what you said, I know it's all very situational, but like, would knee, generally speaking, be better there then?
Usually, yeah. Nair? Yeah, because you might get the hard hit and you might be able to punish or pressure them better than than Nair. It's at least a shield stun like mix up. The shield stun will be different. They can still do the same thing, probably like pivot shield and shield grab you, but knee kind of can change it up. And also weirdly enough though, but I find that whenever that situation comes up and I choose knee instead, I typically hit knee more. Like I get the hit than shielded than I do with Nair, which doesn't make any sense. You think to yourself that doesn't really make any sense, but for some reason it just happens. I catch them more so going back than I do with the Nair. And it might just be the fact that I'm able to overshoot further because I can just fully hold forward with knee and get like maybe, further drift. I don't know. But typically I find that knee, I can hit them much easier in that situation than with Nair, which again, I can't explain that. I really don't know why. I could, like I said, I could maybe chalk it up to being I'm drifting more or what. But I kind of just say that it just knee is ambiguous. Nair kind of gives you, a bit of a warning because you have the first hit, which doesn't hit, right? So I don't know what frame the second hit comes out of Nair. I should probably look that up. I could probably look that up on the bot in the Falcon Discord. Is it Nair? I think the second hit comes out on frame 20, which is more than reactable. Whereas the knee doesn't come out until frame... Is it really fair? Knee doesn't come out until frame 14 or 15. So pretty much you can't react to it, right? More likely than not, you won't be able to react to it where you can with the second, with Nair. Because Nair's second hit comes out frame 20, which is more than reactable because you've already seen the first Nair come out. So they can already see that your move's coming out, depending, like more likely than not, so they can shield it on reaction.
That brings me to another question, and I hope you don't like interpret this as me just trying to defy what you're saying. I'm genuinely just like curious because of my preconceived notions.
Yeah.
So if knee is better there, or if Nair isn't as good there, I feel like there's also more like context of things. For example, let's say because there's also things to consider, like is this Fox at 10% or are they 76% or something?
Well, yeah, of course. Like if they're higher percent, you could get away with using Nair a lot more. And again, it also depends on what they choose to do. If they're more so shielding than they are so, dash dancing, then you more likely not will be able to get away with knee more than you would with Nair. Whereas if they're more dash dancing, you could probably get away with Nair more. And again, I want to come back to it and say that you could just say, oh, they could react with you jumping. Because that's what most people do. They'll react to Falcon jumping at you instead of the actual move that comes out. That's what a lot of good players tell me. But the thing is it's harder to react to it. In my opinion, it's harder to react to a jump than it is like a jump and a Nair. You know what I mean? You have two things to look for, whereas a jump and a knee is a little bit, you can't react to the knee, but you can react to the jump. So it's more ambiguous on what is going to happen and the spacing and timing in which it's going to happen. Which is why I like to say knee is better, more so for overshooting against opponents who like to dash and shield.
I always thought that Nair is really good in that situation, especially at like early percents, or I guess only at early percents because like I don't know if it's dependent on SDI or like DI or whatever, but like oftentimes if they're at like 3% or something and I hit a Nair, I can turn that into a grab. Like this second hit Nair, like get both hits of Nair into grab, and then like grab is just super duper juicy. So like that's why I was kind of confused when you were talking about how knee is better there, because I'm thinking like Nair, I can get grab off of that and start a whole tech chase and get even a kill off of that, just that one Nair into grab.
Yeah, but I want to preface, or not preface, but I want to counter that by saying that's if you hit and they're not holding down, or that's if you hit and they're not shielding. I'm talking about what works best if they're able to counter it. If I'm going on rank to play versus Joe Schmo unranked Fox, I can overshoot Nair and hit it every single time because they're not reacting or thinking appropriately about what I want to do and what I am actually doing in that moment. Whereas when I play versus someone like Moki or versus Sunsei or Zuppy, they're going to be shielding that. They're going to be reacting to the specific, proper reaction points, I guess you could call them. They're going to be doing what is proper for the most part. Now, again, you can get away with it. If you can get away with it, then go for it. I'm just trying to give you what works best for the most part, because that's what you're trying to figure out right now. You're trying to figure out the best ideas to go in specific situations, right?
Okay.
And again, you obviously understand that there's so many different micro aspects to that, which is why it's difficult for me to kind of quantify specifically what is better than the other one. And again, it all comes down to what works. If Nair is working, go for it. Hell, we saw Mango when we was playing versus the Moon just a second ago. He was only overshoot Nairing pretty much. Then go for it. And like I said, I honestly, I probably more overshoot with Nair than I do with knee. But if I'm really trying to hit someone who is stubborn and I can't get them and they're, dash dancing very well and shielding well, I'm going to go for a knee. But if I'm able to hit them with a Nair, then go for a Nair. Nair, if you're able to utilize it properly, go for a Nair. But again, I'm trying to develop the proper habits or proper, muscle memory behind overshooting, which I'm not sure if you do or don't have. So if you are good at overshooting, then at that point we don't even really need to discuss it. But if you're comfortable with overshooting a decent amount, then continue to overshoot with Nair. Because Nair is in my mind, like you just said, you can catch them or it can lead to certain things. But Nair is harder to overshoot in my mind than knee is, if that makes any sense. Like knee is an easier move to overshoot than Nair is. But Nair is something that, in at least my mind, I like to do it more. I don't know why. I just find Nair more enjoyable to use. That's all I can chalk it up to. But again, it all comes down to how comfortable you are with overshooting. If you're capable of doing it properly, then you can Nair way more than you knee. And in a lot of floatier matchups, that's what I would do. I would Nair more than I would knee. But if you're having difficulties understanding how to overshoot in general, then starting off with overshooting with knee is a very good starting point. Does that make sense?
When you say how to overshoot, like if you know how to, do you mean like the literal mechanical input of overshooting, or do you mean situations where I
situations? Because anyone can overshoot knee or overshoot Nair or overshoot stomp or overshoot grab. It's the mechanics behind hitting in specific situations. Say, for instance, I was teaching. I think his tag is Smiley, JBS Smiley, and he would overshoot, but he wouldn't overshoot enough. So stuff like that, understanding, or if he was in a specific situation where it was someone who was shielding a lot, you could overshoot even more and get behind them. But it's that kind of awareness or that ability to do so in the moment that you need to build upon. Like again, I know the mechanics behind multi-shining, 10 times in a row. Doesn't mean I can multi-shine 10 times in a row, right? So specifically when I'm talking about being comfortable and being able to use it, I'm talking about the ability to use it in the proper situations and the situational awareness that goes into using the specific action. Because again,
and so was your point? Sorry, was your point that so what you're saying is until I'm very comfortable with the idea of where to overshoot situations where overshooting is good, until then knee is going to be better for me.
Knee is typically going to be better for you.
But like once I get really good at overshooting, I'm going to be using Nair more.
You'll probably use Nair more, yes. Because and the reason why, again, like I said, is because with knee, it's out for longer. It's much easier to do full drift with knee and change your drifts accordingly. Whereas with something like Nair, you have to like reset to neutral and then you have to press forward again. It's not out as long. It kind of hits in a weird way. It's not as easy or it's not as intuitive as knee in my mind. And usually from the people I've discussed this with, it's usually not as intuitive as like something like knee. And it's not as easy to perform too. Again, I don't know what you said you started in January and you've only been playing Falcon since May. I'm assuming your technical abilities aren't the greatest. Your ideas so far seem actually okay. Like you're keeping up relatively well, which is really good. But I can't necessarily say, or I don't know how good your technical abilities are. So I'm going off of what works for, someone who doesn't have necessarily the technical abilities to control their drift as effectively as like, a mid-level Falcon or even a high-level Falcon yet. So that's why I'm saying if you practice with knee, again, you can overshoot with Nair. You can do whatever you want after we're done this lesson. It's not up to me how you decide to enjoy playing the game. If you, or once this lesson's finished, you go on ranked, you just start overshooting with Nair and you become beast with overshooting with Nair and you didn't have to knee at all, that's fine. But I'm just saying, typically, it's much easier to control your drift, control your timing, control, a lot of things when you're practicing with knee if you don't fully understand when to overshoot in general, if that makes any sense. But again,
Okay.
if you want, go ahead, go on unranked and practice overshooting with Nair and do both, honestly. But like if you're really struggling with hitting it and you're not really understanding the situations, it's much easier to build the muscle memory and the idea behind it with knee than it is with Nair, because Nair is more technically difficult to pull off. It's also, like I said, it's just not as an intuitive hitbox as knee, in my opinion. Now, again, you might be different, but I'm just trying to go off of what works best universally, because again, that's what I think you're trying to go for, right? What works universally in majority of matchups. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Besides that, I don't know what else we were talking about. I forget where my train of thought was after that. Did any other questions come up?
Like, do I have any questions right now, or
Yeah,
was there any
immediately. Yeah,
questions?
yeah.
Um. Hmm.
Okay.
No.
In that case, we can. So what have we talked about so far? We've talked about the
Um.
idea of game plans and having a simplified view. What I want, what they want, etc. We talked about just general mix-ups in general and overall, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of something I was kind of curious about. So we kind of just talked about for like 30 minutes about why like me might be better than Nair, but I'm gonna guess, isn't it? I feel like this should like it should be objectively it should be objectively like a fact that I shouldn't always be overshooting though, like mixing and
Oh,
overshooting
100%,
Nair.
100%, 100%. I should have said that beforehand that everything I say, especially when it's developing specific muscle memory or habits, the idea behind it isn't supposed to be that you only use this option when it's in this situation. It's more so I'm trying to give you the best way in order to develop that muscle memory or that habit effectively. Again, it's probably best if you overshoot with more than just knee. But if you're at a point where you're like overshooting and you're never hitting, that's when you need to, start very simple and just start with the easiest move to overshoot, which is knee, which is what I was trying to get at. If you're already capable of hitting overshoots like aerials on a different, on a wide array of the cast, then start using other options other than just knee. But if you're finding like on average you're hitting maybe one overshoot a game and you're going for like 20 overshoots, then you gotta start to understand and realize, okay, maybe I'm not doing something proper here. Maybe something's not going right.
Yeah.
Let's break this down into something more easy to understand, which is why I talk about using knee as your starter overshooting aerial. But again, if you're already comfortable enough, then move on to Nair or move on to Stomp or just incorporate them all and practice them all.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no objective. You should always be using knee as an overshoot, or you should always be using this move in this situation ever. Which is why previously, when I was talking about that one specific situation about center stage and Nair in place, I went over the mix-up tree essentially, right, or kind of the mix-up, the mix-ups that could happen in that situation. And I basically said that it's not a bad thing to do, but it's just there's always potentially something better to do, especially if you're trying to build intel or whatever. And again, honestly, you could argue that him doing that Nair in place was actually a good idea because he got information about it. He got information that Zane's going to start swinging, right? And you can definitely do that, right? I personally feel like there are better ways to gain intel, but if that's the way that you feel most comfortable, then go for it. And it did work for none, but then once he used it, he stopped using it essentially. It was like use it and then done. So I think what I want to get at is that you can use it as an option to gain space or to get information, but don't spam it, because once you spam it, then it's the mix, like you're just going to get destroyed for it. Because you might think in the back of your mind like, oh, I can use this to gain information, I can use this to wall out or whatever, but it becomes obsolete very quickly. I had another thought on my mind, but then it's just slipped away. It'll come back. What else? What else can I really show you that's universal? Because like there's nothing punish wise I can be like, oh, this is what you should do universally.
Well, how about this? I feel like we kind of went over the concept of what specifically, I think Falco, where you're talking about, okay, Falco, he wants to shine.
Hmm.
You want a stomper grab. I feel like it'd be really beneficial for me to like, because even though I've played against these characters 500 times each on unranked, I would like to be able to like, I should know these things by now, but I would like to know like what each matchup, like, okay, Fox, you don't want to get hit with up tilt when you try to overshoot, like something like that. Like with, and then when you're playing against Fox, grab and stomp are really juicy. Like knowing those kind of things, I think would be very bit like beneficial for me going into games against.
The rule of thumb, I'll say the rule of thumb for any matchup with Falcon is stomp, knee, or grab are your best options to like those are your starters for a lot of things. May it be a stomp in place if you Lord Stomp, or an overshoot stomp, or a knee in place, or an overshoot knee, or whatever, or a shield grab, or you run in and grab, whatever. Those are universal in every single matchup. Those are what gives you follow ups. Versus Peach, you get a throw, you can get nair or knee, depending on your percentage, or up air. Stomp, you can get a grab at low percent, or stomp knee, or stomp up air knee, or whatever. Versus Peach, same applies to every single other character. Same with Puff, same with Falco, same with Fox. It all depends on their weight, but the idea behind is that from 0 to about 100 for most of the cast, if you get any of those options, it either leads to a kill or to another option in which you can tech chase or get a kill off of it. So
And then what about what I should avoid?
What you avoid depends on each matchup. So for Falco, like I said, you want to avoid Shine. Your whole goal is to avoid Shine or something into Shine. But if you can avoid just getting raw shined like on your shield, that's the majority of it in my mind. If you're getting raw, if they're shield pressuring you and they shine you and you jump out of shield at a bad time and they catch you with the shine, that's the kind of stuff you have to avoid. So avoiding shine. Whereas with Fox, stuff like avoiding grab, which is much harder, or avoiding like an up smash or like getting walled out with a nair, those are the kind of things you want to avoid. But that's more difficult because that's all more so character dependent, whereas like opponent dependent, like player dependent, I find. Because some Foxes will play, very up smash heavy. Some will never use up smash at all versus Falcon. I found like it's very weird. They'll be more nair in your face heavy. An example of that is like I play versus like Zuppy and Lotfi. Zuppy's very like way more up smash heavy and neutral, where someone like Lotfi is a lot more nair heavy and neutral. And it's like it's understanding, I guess, avoiding throwing out a predictable aerial so that they can cut you off with either of those options. And that's a lot more difficult than just the Falco matchup where I'm saying avoid getting shined, right?
Would it be safe to say like if it's very very situational, like you said, a Fox that likes an air a lot versus the one that likes up smash a lot, is it safe to say like, let's say I'm playing against a Nair heavy Fox, I need to realize, okay, Nair is dangerous for me. He's getting a lot off of Nair. I need to start avoiding Nair versus up smash. Okay, I'm getting up smash because he's up throwing me. I need to avoid the grab or whatever. Like he's up smashing me because he's up tilting me. I need to avoid getting up tilt. Like, does that work? That should be fine, right? Like
It works if you can understand the situation in which those it's leading up to that. And what I mean by that, it's like it's easier for, like I said, it's easier for me to quantify it in Falco because a lot of times you'll be in shield and Falco will be shining your shield and you'll do a bad option of shield. That's really easy to avoid. Whereas something with like Fox, if you can understand the situation in which you're getting up smashed or grab and you can avoid that specific situation, then do that. But it's much more difficult to quantify that because, again, it's more player based on what they like to choose. But at the end of the day, if you can understand, in this specific situation, I'm shielding for too long and they're getting a grab. Okay, I have to avoid that. Or for instance, I'm doing a nair, a very predictable nairs, and they're just cutting me off. And I'm doing it at a timing that they can just wait a second and nair. I have to stop doing those nairs. Or I keep doing overshot aerials from too far away, and they just keep up smashing my approaches. It's stuff like that. It's stuff like that, which is more varied. But the idea is still like try to avoid the situations in which they get their they get their preferred launcher or their preferred opener for a combo.
Um,
That's the idea. Where like with Marth, it's like I don't want to get grabbed, or I don't want to get walled or something like that. Which is getting walled is fine. It's more so just like I don't want to get grabbed. Marth at low percent, I don't want to get grabbed. That's like the main thing I'm looking for. And what are the main situations in which Marth gets a grab? Shield grab if I do a poorly spaced aerial, or they're close to me, they dash underneath me and they grab me, or they're just close to me and they run up grab me. So I try to avoid specific situations essentially, and that honestly goes for anything in Melee. If I'm ever the number one rule in Melee, like people say don't get hit, but how I think it is don't give them what they want essentially. Don't be in bad situations. Avoid that situation.
okay.
Like people will be like, how do I get back? I keep double jumping on stage and kneeing, and I'm like, well, avoid that situation. Or like I keep getting myself stuck in the corner like with my back facing towards center stage. Well, don't put yourself in that situation, right? Like avoid the bad situations as best as you can. Make it hard for your opponent and attack an advantage. Now, to get back to what we were talking before, with something like Peach wants like a grab or like a nice down smash. So in that case, if you space your aerials well, they're not going to be able to shield grab you. If you're aware of their dash attacks, like because Peach, if they're grounded, the only thing they can do is either shield your approach or dash attack you. If they're aerial based, all they can do is hope that they're spacing it properly so that they can, fair you or something like that, and then pressure your shield if they don't get a hit. So it all comes down to like raw, what are their capabilities at specific spots, right? And then what do they want? Falco, he has the ability to laser you, dare you, and shine you, essentially, or nair you. Like those are the main things, right? Shine is what leads to everything. So, and what leads into shine, nair or dare or something like that. Or maybe an up tilt, depending. But most of the time, it's either they're shining you and you have shitty out of shield habits, or they're cutting you off with a nair and they end up hitting you because you're in the air and they shine you. Peach, it's either they get a fair and they press your shield, or they get a down smash and a tech chase, or they dash attack and they somehow pop you up or something and they get a grab off of it. Sheik at low percent wants grab. She wants she all of her moves that you can crouch cancel them, so she needs to get grab. Dash attack is our other opener, but that's only once you're out of crouch canceling percentage or ASDI down percentage, right? But essentially, she wants grab. How does she get her grab? Well, she either gets her grab when you do a poorly spaced aerial, or she runs up and boost grabs you. Or she dash dance grabs you. You do like an aerial in place, and then she dash dance whiff punishes you. Those like the different situations, right? What else is there? There's I don't even want to describe Puff. I don't feel like describing Puff. Fuck Puff. I'll come back to her actually. What's another character? Marth, or we already went over Marth. Falcon, the Ditto. Falcon wants a nair grab, so that's one thing, nair, or he wants a knee, or he wants stomp, but he wants a grab essentially. Most of the time, Falcon at low percent wants a grab, and there's those things that lead into it, so you avoid those. And how do you avoid those? Well, there's so many different ways to avoid them. But essentially, you get where I'm coming. You get essentially my point is that I can give you kind of very generalized options of what to look out for. And there's majority of situations like I did with Sheik, I was able to quantify it in like 3 different ways that she's going to get a grab on you. But there's obviously more to that in Melee than just that.
Right.
So it's hard for me to directly state those all of that goes along with it, because then you end up getting more micro than you get macro. But the idea is that you have to think for yourself, okay, what do they want? And then you have to understand just intuitively from playing those matchups, how to avoid giving them what they want. Does that make sense? I can't give you everything and be like, okay, memorize all of this. I mean, I could potentially try to, but that would be way more difficult for you, in my opinion, to learn actually off of it than for you to just play and to think about the options that they're getting. And then once you get hit by those ones that you're trying to avoid, you then make a mental note. And over time, you start to build this idea of, okay, they can do this, they want this, and this is what they can do to lead up to it. And eventually it becomes second nature of you avoiding those specific options. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, I can tell you, you can think about it yourself, and I already gave you, decent amount of what they want, but you can go on your own and you can think to yourself, okay, Marth wants a grab. Okay, how does Marth get his grab? And you can go through the specific situations in which Marth gets his grab at low percent. You know, then you can do it for Sheik. Then you can do it for Fox with Nair or up smash. Then you can do it with Falco with Shine. Then you can do it with, Puff with back air or grab, right? Or you can do it with Falcon with his grab. They all lead to a specific option that leads to a launcher or leads to a tech chase, right? Marth leads to a grab. Sheik leads to a grab. Falco leads to a launcher. Fox typically leads to a launcher or a grab. Falcon leads to a grab. Puff leads to a launcher more or a grab, sometimes kind of mix. But you get what I'm getting at. They all lead to a specific option. You have to figure out what counters or how do I avoid getting into those situations. And there's many different ways. But that's essentially how I think about, my game plan at low percent. And then I think about, not attacking in disadvantage because a lot of people attack in disadvantage. And then, like I said before, I have this framework, which you talked about with Bones before, about how, people have specific options and you don't change a specific option until they show that you have to change the mix up. Right. And that goes for panic options too. Understanding, they like to double jump back to stage with stomp or knee or something or fair or whatever. I'm going to keep punishing that until they change that. And once they do, then I'm gonna make a mental note that they do that as a panic option, and I'm gonna keep punishing them for it until they change it. What else is a universal thing that we talked about? The overshoots, which I already went over. Again, I don't know how familiar you are with overshoots, but essentially that's, you get the gist of how to develop proper overshoots if you don't already know. Besides that, there's not much else I can think of that is besides, specific things that you yourself like to do. Now, did you have any questions with anything I just said? I just listed off a lot of things, so I don't know if you have any questions.
Let me think. Hmm. Not really with anything you've said, but like I don't know. This could be too deep of a topic to get in, but like I feel like I have trouble like knowing, um, for example, the tools I have and the like, except for like Nair and stuff. Like I know the general like Nair is going to be your Swiss Army knife and neutral, but like things like for example, stomp, up air, like I want to be able to. I know what these tools are. I just want to know how to use them efficiently. Like, and it can obviously be very general. It's very they can get very very specific, but like generally speaking, because I just would like to have a general idea of where to use my tools, and then from there I can expand and realize, okay, they also work like this or like this. But I want to have like at least a general idea before I start getting very specific.
All right, I can kind of do that. I'll try my best to do that. Easiest one to discuss is probably up air. Up air is the one move that typically you only want to use if they're above you. It's not the greatest if they're like level with you, unless you feel like you can instantly hit them out of the air. But that's not the greatest thing because again, the issue with up air is it's not out for a while. So I usually like to limit up air really only to being like above me. And what I mean by that, it's like if they're either on platforms or they're a puff and they're kind of above, my Nair range. So I have to go for up air, stuff like that. Nair, again, a Swiss Army knife. You could use it in a lot of different situations. It's one of those moves that there's really only bad time to use it is if they crouch cancel it, honestly. Stomp is a move that I spam. I honestly think you can just spam stomp a lot of the times. I typically look at stomp as a move of more so I use it in punishes than I do in raw neutral. Raw neutral, I try to stay away from stomp because it's laggy. But if I'm close to people, I choose to use stomp a lot of the times, just because most of the people that I'm like, especially spacies like Fox or even if it's like Sheik, they're usually low profile. And stomp feels a lot easier to hit low profile characters than say knee or nair, right?
Um,
But at the same time, stomp is laggy. So it's one of those things where you could use stomp a lot, but you can also get punished for using stomp a lot. So it's hard to say necessarily that you can use it in this situation or generally speaking in these kind of situations. But if they're going very low profile, I like to use stomp. That's kind of the idea behind it. Um, what else could I say about stomp? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to like think of each matchup and then just kind of broad neutral situations in which I would use these moves.
what about like Lord Side? Isn't that good for? Um,
Lord Stomp. So Lord Stomp is really good, but it's also a crutch. In my opinion, it's a crutch. A lot of people swear by it, but the thing is with Lord Stomp is again it leaves it up to the opponent approaching you, and you getting reversal punish off of it and punishing off of it. Most of the time, I'd say it's almost better to just back air. If you're gonna Lord Stomp, you can back air instead.
and is Wizzy Stomp similar in that kind of way?
Wizzy and Lord Stomp are the same thing. So, yeah, where you dash back, drift, and stomp, you could just
I thought Wizzy Stomp was like I what I think, at least this is what I thought. Lord Stomp is a like fade back stomp that's meant to hit approaching like a fox snare. Yeah, you jump over his snare and stomp him.
mm,
Wizzy Stomp, I thought that was like you do like Wizzy will do something like a really quick short hop nair in order to entice like an opponent to approach, like to with punish the nair, and then he does like a quick fade back stomp right after it to like stuff. I guess they kind of are the same thing when I
there.
look at them
There,
that way.
I get what you mean. Wizzy definitely uses it like that more so, but the actual options between like the actual what Wizzy Stomp and Lord Stomp are the exact same thing. It's just Lord Stomp. Lord wasn't a well-known player and stopped playing competitively around like 2015, but he was the one who really popularized it or the one who really did it first. Like kind of like how hack stashing. Hacks was the first one to do hack stashing, but Wizzy's the one who really used it. And the 20GX Falcons are the ones who really pushed it further, right? And really
Uh,
brought it to the forefront. Same with Wizzy. Wizzy is the one who really took it further than Lord, right? But at the end of the day, they're both the same exact thing. They're both you dash away and then you drift back and then you stomp. And it's meant to be in air. It's meant to be dash tack. It's meant to be, even up smash, depending if their up smash is bad. But usually, if it's like up smash from a fox, that's what beats Lord Stomp. Lord Stomp is good, or Wheezy Stomp, or whatever you want to call it. It is a very good option. But again, it comes back to it's kind of like a fade back aerial. It's more like a aerial in place when you think about it. But it's kind of like a fade back aerial where you're hoping they come into you, which is fine. But again, I usually like to approach more and set the pace or try to set the pace than to let them set the pace. Because that feels very uncomfortable. It's very, very awkward to have to deal with the way that they want to play neutral. I find I can't, start thinking about what the opponent wants to do. And I don't find I get enough intel on the habits of a player when I'm playing too defensive. And I find Lord Stomp kind of allows you to play too defensively, which is why I like to say it's a crutch. Now, that being said, it's a good option. It's a fine option, but it's one that I feel like as time goes on, you'll start to understand. Unless you revolve your playstyle around it, it's not going to be as valid of an option as you might think it'll be.
I have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, um, I don't know. You could just straight up not like this move and think it's like overrated or something. But like gentlemen, and we haven't gone over gentlemen yet. And I want to like try like how about I describe like how you said like for example, um, stomp is good and punish because it's like very laggy or whatever. I try to describe what I think like gentleman is, and you can tell me if I have the right idea or if I'm wrong or something.
Okay.
So from what I understand, I believe gentleman is like a good like kind of if I do something unsafe, like I do an unsafe nair or like up air and shield or something, I kind of have the habit of instantly gentlemaning. So like try to stuff their shield grab or something. Um, like I kind of see gentleman as like a what's the word? Like a get off me move. Like please don't punish me. Like I'm gonna use gentleman.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. It's also like kind of a move to stuff, right? Jabs in general are really good at quickly stuffing something. Like if, and by stuff I don't mean like wall, more so just like stop something if it's like if they're close by or if they're
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
said, it is kind of like a get off me. I like gentlemen a lot, especially if they like to run through me or they're running around me, and or like to run at me and they haven't thrown out a move yet. Because a lot of people will try to like run past you or run through you or whatever, and gentlemen's really good at catching them. Because you don't have any other moves that are fast enough to catch them, going through you. Especially with like foxes, I find a lot of times like I'll be in a situation where I can gentleman or I can jab them and I can catch them. Or like you said, if they're on me or I do like a knee or something, I can do, mix up with gentleman or jab. And I really like using that because unless they shield grab me, I'm more likely than not I can deal with their mix up, which is like a down tilt or is like a nair or whatever. But most of the time it's down tilt because they're usually already holding down. If they're not holding down, then I have all the more frame advantage to deal with to have a follow up. But yeah, gentlemen or jabs in general are good. They're good if you're close quarters and you don't have time to do something else. That's how I like to think of it. They're good also at stopping people in their movement. So you can, a lot of times you'll see like people will do, like Wizzy will do a jab grab if they're like dashing around him or they do something and he hits them. He can even like hit their aerial before it comes out and he'll jab them and then grab them. Jab's really good at that. It's good at mixing up people's timings too, because sometimes people will like you'll do like a knee and they'll be CCing it, and then they try to act. You can jab them, and then you hit them out of their option that they're trying, like their counter option, and then they mess up their timing, or a bunch of different things. But gentlemen specifically, I find is really good if like if you're close quarters and you do like a knee or a nair or whatever. It's really good to do. Or if they're running through you and you can catch them, gentlemen, them there, kind of like that. But it is kind of like a get off me or like a extra, punish, I guess you could say, or extra pressure. It's really your pressure tool, jabs and gentlemen, because we don't have anything else that can pressure outside of spaced aerials or whatever, right? Or like a spaced aerial or like a well timed knee where you can dash away. Gentlemen's really our pressure move, right? It's our pressure move. It's also a comboing move. I use it a lot versus floaties and Sheik and Marth. It's really good at comboing. I probably overuse it versus a lot of them, but I also think it's just so good because you can hit a knee after sometimes, or even an up air or whatever.
Well, I try to do the same thing now, but with like crouch cans.
What do you mean?
I feel like that's like a tool, like where I try to describe it and then let me know if I'm right or wrong about it.
Well, how do you think of crouch canceling?
I rarely crouch cancel, but I kind of think I have at least a good idea. Like crouch cancel, you're looking for like a reversal. Like you're hoping if I'm playing against Marth, I'm hoping this Marth nairs at me so I can crouch cancel, grab it. If I'm playing against Sheik, they're gonna try to get a dash attack or F tilt on me. Yeah, I crouch cancel it. If it doesn't pop me up, I get a reversal. I get a grab or gentleman off of it. Like Falco tries to double laser me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My question is, what option does crouch cancel replace?
Shield.
Shield. Right. Okay.
Or like maybe dash dance in some situations.
Potentially. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I mean, essentially, it's really just shield because you could also shield in those positions where you could dash dance.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's how I would describe it too. It's just meant to reversal where shield wouldn't necessarily be able to. That's the best way of describing it. Now, again, like I said, to actually learn how to use it, because like you said, you don't use it that often, just either go on unranked. Actually, this is the best way to go. Go on unranked and don't shield at all and only crouch cancel. and eventually
Uh-huh.
you'll start to crouch cancel. And even if you're doing it in bad spots, you'll at least get to the habit of starting to do it, and eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, okay, I can't crouch cancel here. Like versus Falco, I don't crouch cancel that much versus Falco, like far away. But if I'm close quarters and Falco's looking away from me, then I can crouch cancel. Because if Falco's looking away from me, the only thing he's really going to do is up tilt or bear, right? So that's a good rule of thumb as well. Um,
Also, like crouch cancel. Obviously, I shouldn't be crouch canceling when I'm at like 95%.
yeah. Like I typically don't crouch cancel after like if it's spacies, I don't crouch cancel past like 50 or 60. If it's Sheik, I stop around 70. If it's Marth, I stop around 60-ish. But there's obviously we have in the Falcon Discord, we have a list of all the moves and when they are out of crouch cancel percentage versus each character. But it's like you're not gonna memorize that, and even if you do, like it's very hard to incorporate that appropriately because the game moves too quickly, right? Like your percentages change rapidly. So it's like if I'm below 50, I'm going to crouch cancel versus like Sheik and Marth and Puff and Fox and whatever, right? Um, what else? Crouch canceling, yeah. Is there any other options you can think of? I guess we could go over back air. Back air
Throws.
throws.
Oh,
Well, I'll go over back air because I didn't do back air
yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah.
Back air specifically is really good for walling. It's really good for edge guarding. But specifically, it's like if you know they're coming at you and you're dashing away and you don't have enough time to dash out of it, Bair's really good to stuff.
I like to use back air. Well, I mean, I don't only use it for this, but like specifically maybe against like Marth, like and on a ledge and just back airing like the
Mm-hmm.
corner.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's called like that's execution testing is what they call it. When you're basically testing the ability of somebody in a situation by pressuring them. So execution testing Marth is really execution testing every character off the ledge is what you should be doing. But specifically with like Marth is really good to do. And same with like Sheik. It's a little bit more difficult with like Fox because ledge dash can be really hard to cover sometimes, and you have to read it. Where someone like Marth or Sheik, you can just spam bear a lot of times, and you'll hit them when they're coming off ledge. That's really good to do, especially if you have like a good spacing and good timing along with it. But a lot of times I'll notice people like they'll just run to center stage and wait, and it's like why do that when you can force them to mess up or even hit them potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back air is really good for that. Honestly, you could literally stand and play some back air and you would get very far in the game. Like you could pretend you're Puff in a way and you would get very far in the game. Back air is very good at
Yeah.
stuffing stuff. It's very good. It's not disjointed, but it just hits far and it stuffs a lot of things. It's out for a decent amount of time. It's good for combos. But really, it's just good at walling is what it really is good for. It's like if you're not going to nair in place, do a bear in place. Like that's honestly good. It's also good to like do approaching bear, double jump approaching bear, like what Wizzy does. That can also catch a lot of people. Throws. Now, what do you mean specifically with throws?
So I know there's matchup, but like when I get a grab, I'm probably gonna down throw most of the time because it sets up a tech chase. I can do a read or something like a stomp. That's kind of what I mean about like what a throw would do for me as a tool.
Okay, so throws are either punish so you can get tech chase, or throws allow you to get better positional advantage. It's at worst when you do a throw, you're hoping to get a punish off of it. With spacies, it's either a reaction tech chase or a read. With Marth or like with floaties in general, you're hoping to get an aerial afterwards. Now, this is one of the things where you probably will be best if you just look at what we have on the bot in the Falcon Discord and try to mimic what they are. But I'd like maybe for like Sheik on up throw at like 31, instead of doing it at 31%, do it at like 35 or 40%. Give yourself a little bit more leniency. Because most of the time, if I'm at like literally the cusp of when I can do an up throw, I'll do a down throw instead. If it calls for an up throw on like the flow chart. Spacies, you can honestly tech chase with either down throw or up throw. usually down throw is what people use at lower percent, and then up throw once they're past like 50%, and then up into the higher percents because you can get like a guaranteed follow up off of it, right? But some people even down throw for longer. Like S2J down throws spacies until they're like 110 sometimes, just because he wants to. Like he'll just down throw and then he'll get a tech chase, which is fine because he has a lot of time to react to it. But I prefer to do up throw at like, past like 70% just so I can get like even a forward tilt. Sometimes you get an F smash, sometimes you can get a regrab, whatever, right? But again, when it comes to throw specifically, you're going to have to just go through the flowcharts that we have in the Falcon Discord and practice those. There's really no other way of going about it. Like I could list off, I could go through them right now with all of them with you and talk about how I would go about doing them. But really, I would just come down to me saying, practice these flowcharts. Except be a little bit more lenient on the percentage, like increase the percentage a little bit. If it's like, say, like Sheik up throw at 31, do it like 40%. If it's Marth down throw, like typically Marth, you can down throw the entire time. You never have to up throw. Some people will down throw until they can down throw knee. But some people will mix up throw and then go for an up throw knee. But it depends, I find if you're port closer to 4 and they're port closer to 1, I can get away with more up throw combos on a lot of characters, like with Marth and Sheik, because you act one frame sooner. I don't know if you know that. Do you?
I know a little about port priority, but I think it was literally yesterday where I just heard that some combos are true just because of port, like
Yes.
up throw, up air, up throw, up tilt with like Marth or something.
Yeah, some things like some characters it really matters. I find with Falcon it's not the hugest of deals, but it does help a lot more than I think. At least it helps a lot for myself. So I always try to get port 4, and then that way I can get up throw up air off like Sheik a lot easier. I can get up throw knee a lot easier against Marth, stuff like that. It kind of changes, but for the most part, the entirety of it, you could just down throw versus Marth, and your knees don't really change. Like I kill percentage, but again, that all just I can't really list it all. I go through the bot and say it exactly what it is, but I just have that all memorized myself, right? That's all just stuff I looked at, practiced it for years or for months, and then I eventually got to the point where I can just do it. You know what I mean? And really what it comes down to is just acting out of throws immediately. The sooner you can act out of throws, like you're not waiting, the better. Which is why like I would recommend if I was you, I don't know if you already do or not, but there's a gecko code that you can apply that like when you're playing online, like Slippy or whatever, that tells like flashes white or flashes green whenever you're waiting, whenever you're in the wait animation.
Yeah.
And that's really good because off of throws, once you're done your throw, you go into wait like immediately, I think it is, and a bunch of other things. And the other one I would recommend is the L cancel or the flash red on missed L cancel. That's also a really good one. If you have both of those and you really, you don't focus too hard on them, but just have them on, it can help you a lot, especially for throw combos.
And then I feel like the only other like, what is it called? Tool I'm going to be using all the time because, like, for example, there's up tilt, but I'm not going to be using up tilt a lot, or like forward tilt. I'm not going to be using it a whole bunch, generally speaking. So I feel like the last general tool will be like dash dance, which I'm assuming is like spacing around my opponent's moves. I think you brought up using a dash dance to like cover space, like establish your space. That's kind of my general idea of dash dancing.
Dash dancing is one of those things where it could be used to evade, it could be used to gain space, it could be used to it could be used in a lot of different ways, just dashing in general. So it's really hard for me to say this is good, this is bad, this is whatever, because some people don't dash dance that much. Like myself, I used to not dash dance that much, and I would still do fairly well. Some people dash dance like a lot. Some people don't. Some people just literally do aerials in place, or like a lot of aerials in place versus dash dancing. Really, what dash dancing is meant to be is it's meant to. My understanding of dash dancing is it's meant to allow you to evade. Really, what it is, you have a lot of options out of dash dance, and moving in general makes it hard to let your opponent know where you are. When you're in place, it's much easier to hit an in-place opponent than it is to hit an opponent that is moving, which is why people dash dance.
Also adds a bit of ambiguity, doesn't it? Like dash dancing before an approach to kind of,
Yes. The one thing I love about Mango's Falcon, and you'll notice I'll talk about Mango's Falcon more than probably a lot of Falcons, just because he uses drift in a way a lot of Falcons don't, and he also uses dash ants in a way, and dash ants is for approaching in a way a lot of Falcons don't. Mango, when he approaches, he'll almost always do like one or two dashes, and then he'll dash in. He'll dash out and then dash in, or he'll dash out, dash in, dash out, and then back in. Like he almost always when he was playing like versus Marth or Sheik or a lot of characters, he'll dash out, dash in, because it's kind of ambiguous, right? Because you don't know if he's gonna, if you always like just dash in without doing kind of a bit of dash dance, it's not as ambiguous, right? Like you said, it's not as ambiguous. Whereas like if you dash out, dash in, it's kind of ambiguous, or it just changes things up. It's one of those things where I don't even know how to explain why it is. It just is. It just makes it more difficult to deal with. And I really just think it comes down to the fact that it's much harder to hit an opponent who is moving than one that's standing still. Besides that, anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. I tried my best to give you kind of an understanding of specific general tools. I did kind of focus a little too hard in the beginning on like specifically Marth, but in my mind, it's a lot easier to go over a lot of things when you're talking specifically with a matchup than it is to go overall, because again, even though Falcon is quite bread and butter or quite movement based and less so like matchup dependent, there's still a lot of things that you have to look out for in matchups. You can't just blindly be like, oh, I can use this matchup, understanding for Marth, I can use this for Fox. It doesn't really necessarily work like that. Which is why, again, I tried to focus more specifically on like the game plan ideas of what I want, what I don't want, and then avoiding those options that you don't want to get hit by and everything else we talked about. So hopefully, it was beneficial to you. Again, it's very difficult to, universally describe specific concepts about the game, but I try my best. So hopefully that helped. But besides that, do you have any other questions or no? I think you just said no.
I actually kind of just thought of one.
Okay.
So if I were to like get another session, what would that look like? Would it be like more in depth on like certain matchups, or would it just be more just general ideas?
I mean,
Or I guess it kind of be just up to me, wouldn't it?
it's
Like
all
what I'm
again. It's
struggling with?
all up to you at the end of the day. I can do any of them. Again, it gets a lot more difficult, being more general in a lot of situations. It's much more easier for me to be like, okay, this session we're going to focus on the matchup and the punish against Sheik, or this time we're going to focus on the matchup and punish against Marth. It's way more difficult to go over the broad concepts like I did right now. And I only made the exception just because it's the first lesson, and only because it's difficult, only because it's really hard to quantify things in Melee because it's such a sandboxy game. Like there's so many different things you can choose and do and whatnot, and even the concepts themselves are very hard to go over when you're talking about them just like how we're doing right now. It's way easier if I can pinpoint specific things and specific matchups, and then we can go from there. There's even a bot command in the Discord that I think it's called !questions that describes I think it's !question maybe that describes why it's difficult to answer specific questions that are very general. What does he even talk about? It says, don't ask to ask, just ask. No, that's not that. It's something else. Like questions like, when do I nair? Which is kind of what I went over with all the moves, right? When do I, what's the general use to use nair? What's general use to use back air? This and that. And I think I did an okay job of describing, the overall ideas of certain things. But at a certain point, there's only so much I can do with that kind of approach to teaching. And eventually it gets to the point where I'm either going to be regurgitating what I'm saying, or I'm going to be, inadvertently getting more specific, which is what happened earlier in this lesson. I got very specific, or I got more specific with a matchup because it's just easier to describe specific concepts like that. And also, like when I tried to go through each of the moves and really lay out specific neutral options or when to use those in neutral, it took me a second to really think about what to say, because I don't want to say something that is incorrect. Because I don't want to say, something like always stomp at a shield. You know what I mean? Versus puff.
Huh.
Or always stomp at a shield in general, and because that's not a good idea, right? Like that's a bad example, because it's not, one that could be potentially like an example that I could actually say. But that my point still stands, that I didn't want to be like, give a universal option, and then all of a sudden you try and use it, and then you're like, well, this isn't working, and then you come back to me, and then I have to, completely rework everything that we went over or whatever, right? Because
I know what you mean.
Because you start spamming that one thing. So, again, I could try to do it again, in the next lesson, if you wanted to. If you ever end up getting another lesson, again, I don't want to pressure you into getting any more lessons. I want you to choose on your own. But if you were to get another lesson, it's way easier for me to actually, go over specific concepts to help you if we're going over either specific matchups or your specific VODs that we can review, right? But again, a lot of Melee comes down to knowing especially with Falcon, is knowing your throw flowcharts. Because getting like a stomp into like a nair or knee or whatever, like that's very easy. But your throw follow-ups become a lot more difficult, especially when you take into account platforms. So getting comfortable with your throw follow-ups, or starting to practice those, is really important. I've literally won sets just because of the fact that I was able to effectively punish like a Sheik or a Marth. And it literally just came down to me being able to outpunish them. And at the end of the day, if you're not killing them, they're going to be killing you, and that's how you win the game. And I think Logan, or LSD, the Marth player, he actually had an article about that, I think, or he talked about it briefly, about how people describe or talk about neutral so much more than just the punish. At the end of the day, you could win 1,000 neutral exchanges, but if you're not punishing effectively, you're going to lose still. It doesn't matter how many, neutral is just people's way of, trying to feel good about themselves at the end of the day, because, oh, I'm better neutral than you. And they feel like, you being a punish monkey is like, you're not actually playing the game or whatever. And I used to think that a lot about the game, but I realized, decently, or quite recently, that, at the end of the day, when you're competing, you're there to win. So it doesn't matter how you win. And the easiest way to win is to outpunish your opponent. Like, you might not agree with that playstyle. Like an example I find a lot of people just talk about, and I'll name that person just because it matches up so perfectly. But a play like Just Jason is one I hear described a lot about how he's just, very good at tech chasing, but his neutral is quite lackluster. But he still gets the results. He still gets the wins. So you can, not agree with necessarily how he plays, but you have to still respect the fact that he wins and understand that he is winning because of it. So again, it all comes. My whole point about this is that you could focus so much on, your neutral and what you're missing here and what that. But at the end of the day, you have to put in the time every day, especially in the beginning, to really practice specific fundamentals. And it doesn't even have to be a long time. Like what I would do if I was you personally is 30 minutes every day. I'd practice just general movement like wave dashing, ledge play, platform movement, moving out of moves quickly, stuff like that. And then if you do have more time, then I would go into specific, things like practicing specific flow charts like throw follow-ups. And you have Uncle Punch now. Back when I started, we didn't have Uncle Punch. We didn't have, 20XX, and I guess we did, but it was very difficult. Using 20X 3.02 to use to practice things was fucking horrible. It was the worst thing ever. It was actually so difficult to practice things. Whereas nowadays we have Uncle Punch, where you can set up specific save states and, have percentages and specific DI and stuff like that. And you can practice everything, all the flowcharts effectively. And that's what I would do. And really what it comes down to is practicing the lower percent flowcharts, because those are the more difficult ones. The higher percentage stuff is usually just acting out immediately and then reacting to DI. Whereas the lower percent is like acting immediately and like hitting an instant aerial, which is very difficult. Usually it's like an instant up air or an instant double jump nair or something like that. That's a lot harder. Whereas like higher percent, it's like, oh, I just have to throw it on knee. I can easily just hold left and press A. and if it's like full DI out, or I can just easily, it's much more lenient. But anyways, when it comes down to, I'll give you this before we wrap up. My guide to improvement is, make sure when you're playing, you are enjoying playing the game. Don't play the game if you're not enjoying the game. That's the easiest way to develop bad habits and to always autopilot. So always ask yourself when you're playing or before you're playing, am I actually enjoying playing right now? And if you aren't, stop playing. Now, if it's tournament, it's a little bit different because obviously you're in tournament. You can't just be like, I don't want to play. But when you're playing unranked or you're playing with your friends or whatever, and you're not having fun, stop playing. Just don't play. Go away, do something else. And if you feel like you still want to play, but you're not having fun, come back a little bit later and try again. But don't play when you're not having fun. That's the worst thing you could do. Secondly, every time, always try and think about the game. Think about what I could do here, what I couldn't do here, and always think about it. Either when you're watching Melee, think about what people could be doing, even if it's not Falcon related. When you're playing Melee, try to focus, and whenever you die, think about what happened on the Angel platform, or think about it after the game and think about what specifically happened, what you could have done differently in this situation. Why did you get hit with this move here? Whatever you can think of in the moment, try and think about what was and what could have been instead. Besides those two things, the only other thing I can really say is important in improving in Melee, besides having fun and asking questions and asking why, and what could have been, is improve yourself. Eat healthier, sleep better, exercise, meditate, stuff like that. You don't have to do those. That's why I leave it as like the last thing to say. But those are some things that can really help you improve your stamina, improve your reflexes, improve your enjoyment in general. And enjoyment, and I find, is one of the most important things for improvement is enjoyment. When you enjoy something and you're getting positive feedback, you only want to play more and you're only going to play better. It's just weird. I don't know why it is. But when you're having fun, like, I don't know if you've ever taken a break from Melee for a week or two or a month or whatever, and you come back and you're like, man, this game's so much fun, and you're just playing better than you feel like you normally play. Has that ever happened to you before?
I literally said something in the Discord earlier today. I know it's a big thing when players oh, I need to warm up. I'm at my best when it's I'm picking up my controller for the first time in the day.
Yeah, same.
I don't know if that's what you're describing.
Yeah, you're fresh.
Yeah.
You're fresh, man. That's how I describe it. You're fresh. And then I find the thing is that's how I am too. But at the same time, you can't rely on that, because in tournament, I find that almost always had me backfire. And so I had to work past that and try to, come up to, get the consistency throughout instead of just in the first few games. But yeah, I'm the exact same. I pick up the controller the first time in the day. It could even be I played all yesterday and I'm playing again today, and I play my first game. I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing some nasty shit right now. And then come 2 games later, I start playing a little bit worse. And then, an hour in and I already want to stop playing or whatever. And that leads me into stamina. And that's why, exercising, eating better, sleeping better in general, practicing your focus really helps with stamina and playing for longer and prolonging that kind of, initial burst of, ability is what I would call it. Right. But yeah, besides that, those are the main things. Enjoy the game. Always ask questions, and then improve yourself. Improving yourself outside of the game will improve yourself in the game. Improving yourself in the game won't necessarily improve you outside of the game. But if you improve yourself out of the game, I can guarantee you will improve in the game. 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I think I learned a lot more than I thought, especially there was a lot of mental stuff that I didn't even think we would go over, but definitely beneficial. But yeah, thanks so much for helping me out. I know we kind of went a bunch over than originally anticipated, which is honestly better for me. I'm getting more bang for my buck or whatever.
Always.
But yeah, I'm excited to probably book another session. I think it'd be beneficial for me to at least have a VOD or a specific matchup, like you said, to get more in depth. But yeah, I definitely think this general kind of lesson was really beneficial for the first time to kind of just get a good idea.
Awesome. I'm going to end the stream now.